Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Unbridled Equestrian Podcast. Today, I have Ann Kathrin Martins joining us, and you have a really unique story, Anne. So, you were born in Germany, came to Canada after, I think you said you were around 10.
Yeah,
But had
12-ish, yeah.
Oh, okay. And had moved around and really worked with horses all over the world. So I'm excited to hear more about your story and your travels and your equestrian journeys in all of these different places. And also has a background in equine massage, as well as we met at a track system event. So we're talking about integrating more movement and assessing how horses are being kept and practical management tips and techniques for laminitis and improving overall equine well-being through diet, exercise, and how we're keeping them. You've got a really unique background in yoga and working with horses in so many different aspects. So I can't wait to hear more about your stories. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. And I'm so happy to be part of these podcasts and the community that you're bringing together and also kind of highlighting. So that's very exciting. Thank you for having me.
Yes, my pleasure. Wow. And I would love even to get rolling to hear a little bit about your origin story because it's really quite fascinating.
Sure. So I was born in northern Germany, so lots and lots of horses where we were. After the Second World War, they kind of decided the best way to keep horses alive was to give them a job as a sports horse. And so all of these war horses that, were kind of hanging on and people didn't really have any money and reason to keep them. Well, what they did really well was create the sport of jumping and hunter and dressage. Well, the dressage was already there because that's the preparation for war. But then the jumping and all of that was kind of more for recreation. Right? So yeah, lots and lots of girls, women mainly, and then also men were coming. And so that's why horses remained.
Okay.
Very much a part of the German culture and daily community.
Okay.
And the way that small towns were created when I was there was that you would have your strip of houses like this, and then another row here in the road. And then around the town were the fields.
Okay.
So you might have a horse riding institution right here, and then a bakery, and then a butcher, and then your neighbors. And then so it went on like this. So you kind of come into the fronts of these, and then behind was this whole different world, Yeah. So often you would just have horses riding through the streets, going to the pastures or being moved. And it was just very much a part of everyday life and activity.
Okay.
So that was nice. So I started out always just being around the horses. My great grandfather had 2 horses that he took to great grandfather to the First World War, and he brought both horses back. So of course that's the family legacy.
Yeah.
Because to be able to take 2 horses and return with 2 horses was a big deal. Yeah. And so he was known as a very respected horseman. And then my grandfather, my mom's father, was a saddle maker and also made tech for the war. So lots of horsemen in my lineage and in my blood, which I feel very blessed with, and just growing up around that environment. So we headed off to our hangout at our Weiterhof, the stables, and I started. First, you have to do vaulting. Okay. So that's mandatory. So you do a year or 2 at least of that. Once you have a good independent seat, and usually all the kids are vaulting out like 6 years old or 4 years old. Right. So you're hoping to get that before you're 8 you want to ride. Yeah. And then you move on to the riding. And one of the nice things that they have in Germany is called Pflegepferde. And your Pflegepferd is a horse that you just get to look after, but somebody else owns. So it's a win-win-win. The horse wins, the usually young girl wins, and the owner wins big, especially if he has a great young girl. And so it was a way that we could all be in the barn with the horses. So my friend and I, her name was Katrina, so my full name is Ann Kathrin or Ann Kathrin. So her full name was Kathrin. So Ann Kathrin was our name together. So we got ourselves a brush box. It was Ann Kathrin's brush box. And we got this mare. We were 9, and she was this great big warm blood named Diana. And she never left the stall. And we really noticed that. And her stall was never cleaned. They just added more straw. So the the school would feed her and also add bedding, and they had automatic waterers. So that was kind of part and parcel, but they didn't like muck out or take the horse out or anything. So we noticed that Diana never left, and her stall just got higher. And so we asked if she could become our pflegevet. And I think the lady was actually either a vet or a doctor. And she had just had a kid. So she was very busy and she was very grateful. So we would take Diana, we would muck out. We got our box of, brushes and stuff and brush her. And she was giant, and we'd walk her. And Diana was just a lighter. And so we would just take her to pasture. We were kind of supposed to lunge her and do different things with her as part of it. So we would just lunge each other and pretend to be horses, which was like the best part. And then we go get Diana and walk back. Diana loved it. And then we started cleaning her stall. And I just always loved the act of preparing spaces. And so just to be able to change a space by cleaning it up and putting fresh bedding, this change for her was huge, right? So that was the start of my equine husbandry journey.
It's neat as you were talking about preparing spaces, and then what you've done most recently with developing the track system. So
it's always about preparing spaces.
Yeah. And it's so neat. I think that was one of the things I was most taken with when I heard you speak at the track system tour, just the amount of thought that went into the preparation of the spaces for these horses. So that when they landed in them, they could unpack their bags and feel comfortable and at home. And I think that's something that we don't often consider for horses.
Yeah.
And yet, much like us, our space makes such a difference to how we feel. And feeling is such a powerful thing, like you and I have discussed, because it really dictates how we relate to the space around us, to one another, and ultimately, I think, to ourselves.
Absolutely, to ourselves, right? We talk about in horsemanship feel. Like that is the most talked about things. But how does it feel to have your barn alley swept? How does it feel to have your tack clean? How does it feel to have your brushes organized? How does it feel to have your box stall clean? And it goes beyond that, right? Like, how does it feel for the horses to have beautiful flowers? Like, we grew this field of mixed orchard grasses, and then we put in a ton of wildflowers, and they just loaded it with poppies. And so we had this field of poppies, and it was so beautiful. And I just knew that the horses were appreciating the flowers. Like that was fun.
So cool.
Yes, creating spaces of feel. And the other thing with those spaces for the horses is what I really become is a non-event planner. So that's like my favorite thing. There's event planners, and I am a non-event.
Yeah, tell us more about that.
So anytime you have to make changes, you have to go through all of the scenarios, and usually they're not going to happen, which is great. But you have to be like, okay, do I have 2 gates? What condition are my gates in? Are they closed? Are they open? What can the horse see at that corner? Is that an issue? Where does the hay net hang? How close is that to the gate entrance, which would cause a disruption for that horse to be able to get the water? So that's the fun thing. So you're going into like the matrix, and then you're going into space and spatial relationships between the horses, which is super fun. And then just how do you design the space for, in my case, 5 different herd members? But if you have 2, it's easier.
Sure. Yeah.
Or 1.
Less dynamic.
Yeah. But still, even for 1, you can create all these different things in their space, like even poles or moving the hay net and then creating maybe a bin with a hay net, putting it over there. So you're going to activate the seek system, which is huge in mental well-being. So if you never had to look for something and find anything, that whole loop wouldn't be connected. And that's such a loop for your mental well-being, so that you get to walk over there and find what you were looking for. So you can play with that too inside spaces.
I love that. And I guess why don't we even just jump in from there to the benefits of track systems and some of the things that you've integrated. And for anybody who does not know, the barn that is at Island Arabians is absolutely stunning. And you've been able to do really remarkable work there. Not that that might be possible for everyone, but one of the things that I would love your expertise on is how, if somebody's interested in incorporating movement and capturing some of the other benefits of a track system, how can we get creative to make that happen in barns where maybe there's less space, or for working on a tight budget, that sort of thing? So I'd love to kind of hear your thoughts.
Absolutely. First and foremost, I think when we see anything, any project that seems successful and it seems like it's unattainable, but it's only because you're seeing the end result. And it's still not the end result, right? We're still in process, but you're seeing something that's been years in the making. And so sometimes it's like, oh, I could never do that. And so what we do is we don't start. We have to take one step forward. You want to get fit, and you look at somebody who's really fit and you're maybe 40 pounds overweight. That's a really hard thing to look at, but can you just step a little bit into this direction? So there's a whole theory of give it 20%, it's going to give you back 80. And so it's the same with anything. Give your idea 20% of your energy even, and it's going to give you 80 back. It's all about little steps. And usually we have more space than what we know. We just don't know how to use it.
Yes.
If you have a fence line, you have a track. We can start there.
Yeah.
We can just follow our fence line back, and here we are. So what we're just wanting to do is to facilitate some need to move around and not just stand. And so we can do that in more simple ways than we realize. Also, our tracks don't need to be all-weather tracks.
Right.
We had that opportunity because instead of buying a new truck and trailer, which could have been one of our options, we decided to get footing. So $100,000 of footing later, but that's 2 track systems plus a bunch of extras.
Yes.
Or a truck and trailer.
Yeah.
So sometimes it's about where does the money go? And sometimes it's our priorities.
Yes.
And then the next step is, of course, you might not be in a position where you are allowed to do the things that you want to do. So then we go, well, what is it that we can do?
Yeah.
Can I make some changes in the small environment that my horse is in? And can I maybe buddy up with somebody and go for horse walks? Can I create more of a community? There's always all these little tiny steps. I was very blessed with finding Island Arabians, and Dawn and Ruth James. They really supported the changes because they're horse people at heart, and they just always wanted to do what's best for their horses. So they moved to Deep Cove, got 40 acres, and originally had their horses free. Well, free in the fact that they had fields and such with fences, but still they were out to pasture. They weren't kept in stalls and lifestyle that then progressively became the norm.
Yeah.
And so over time, things change, and I think just agriculturally, a lot of stuff changed. The horse health changed, the horse world changed, and suddenly the horses that were sometimes in stalls or paddocks were now always in stalls or paddocks. And of course, the grass being too nutritious and the wrong types of grasses. And then, of course, our inability to keep them on pasture here over the year because of the conditions of wetness and so on, really limit the exposure to the grass, which then has this huge impact when we get to go and put them on pasture for such a short amount of time and such a rich pasture. So they had all the best of intentions, which I think every single horse person has. But then how do you solve it? And so I got really interested in track systems through Europe and also through Central and South America, because there the horses just make their own tracks. So even in Alberta, when you have a pasture of 500 acres, you can find horses, their tracks. And they do the same through Costa Rica and everywhere they go. And so my horses in Brazil had tracks, but they made them themselves. And then this whole idea that England, especially, and parts of New Zealand, are very similar in our climate. So these were kind of front runners of the tracks that we now see in the liveries, they called them. And so that's where I started getting that inspiration. And then the whole idea with footing and being able to dig out mud. And then you put rocks, and then suddenly we have drainage. And I really have to stress that this project of the track systems is a team effort. I'm only the creator in the fact that I have the vision. But without all the help on ground, it would not exist. We were so fortunate because we work with a local company that does our footing and comes in and helps us, and they have the knowledge. I don't have all of this knowledge, but what happens is people come with their knowledge and they come and they help, and it's never just one person. One person might be the fire starter, the spark, but you need all of that to tend the fire.
Yeah, that's such a good point. And I guess much like anything with horses, it really takes a village.
It takes a village. Yeah.
They're high maintenance creatures, and we're keeping them so often in these artificial environments. So it does take more horsemanship and husbandry from us to make sure that all of those needs are being met. But I love that you said everybody comes with their knowledge, and that's one of the really neat things that I've been experiencing since starting the podcast is really seeing how much unique knowledge is out there. And I love having the opportunity to bring people together to share it. So, with that in mind, can you tell us some of the benefits of a track system setup relative to a standard paddock or a standard?
Sure. So the whole idea is steps. How many steps do we take? And it's the same for us. We have this new knowledge now that we need to take steps and they need to take steps. Well, what are these steps all about? Well, the steps, it turns out, are the basis of everything. It's the basis of the density of our bones. It's how our immune system works. It's how we digest. It's how we metabolize. It's how we assimilate. It's how the cells get going. It's like if we just had a car and we just put gasoline in it, and then everyone put more gasoline in it and more gas. Well, it doesn't really matter because the car is now rusting and everything is going to stop working because that engine actually has to be driving to be making sure that everything is flowing smoothly. So it's very similar to that. And then the system itself is considering the fact that usually we'll have more than one horse on that track so that the animal is with his friends or a herd of some kind. Super important.
Yeah.
And then when they have access to forage, so we place the forage at different locations, which again engages the seat mechanism. So we're asking for that, for them to lower their heads, to come into a more kind of natural way of movement as well. So we, talk to Danielle about the positions of posture. And so if we're in this position and we're waiting all day looking around the corner there, even my spine right now is inverted, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm looking for my best friend who's going to come at some point and hopefully bring me some food. Or I am here waiting and happy and everything's okay. And then I'm going to walk over there and then I might go and pick some carrots out of my garden and then I might come over here and make a salad. Look how many things I'm doing with my body. And if movement was a language, how many words are we using? And movement is a language for us, but more excitingly for the horses. It's a really important language. And it's even so minimal that the movement of the eyelid, the flicker of the ears, that's huge. Movement is so beautiful, and the body movements and the way horses communicate through body communication. So do we. But let's go back to horses, and we agree they use body communication. So we take that away from them when we isolate them, first and foremost. So now all the little nuances that they would normally be activating are atrophizing, which also shuts down a whole bunch of neurology in their brains for communicating emotions, energies, thoughts, all kinds of stuff. Because what's the point? If I'm just here alone by myself, I'm not going to be talking. I'm not going to be moving my hands. I'm not going to be engaging with you. And even most of my facial muscles won't be moving like this, right? So they would atrophize.
Absolutely.
And so I think we miss so much of that. And what I see when I get to watch the herd is just the other day, they were standing on the track up the top, and Jewel was kind of deciding, hey guys, let's go over there. So they had their little conversation back and forth. Yeah, maybe. And so then the first one goes, and then the next one. And they just went over to another spot and lined up the same way that they were over here. But they needed to have that full conversation. And then just go over there and be like, oh, this is Tanner. So Tanya was like, oh, you're getting closer. So he had to go down a little bit too. So everybody's just shifting in the matrix, and it's so beautiful. And there are these little movements. And then, of course, the grandiose movements of a sudden run. It could be a run of joy, and it could be a run of worry. It doesn't matter, because the point is they get to run it off. And so even if it's cortisol, which is fine, it comes up, they can get rid of it. They're not having to hold on to it. So we can move through things like that a lot more. And I see them doing a lot of play movement on the track. So it's just endless, really, the benefits and the simplicity of it too. Like really, you can make it so simple. You could just take your center out of an area, like a field. Are you really not attached to your field that you can't use most of the year? And then why not just take a perimeter of that, the outline like this, and then say, okay, well, you guys can have that. And if you're not in a position where you can put something down, let them wreck the ground. Let's the crop, a little bit of mud's healthy. And then in the summer, it'll dry, and you'll have a dry run for it. And in the meantime, if you want, you could like sow some seeds in the middle, or do something else, or make an crossway through, or the endless possibilities, which is the fun part,
Yeah. And I think what I found so interesting as I was learning more about track systems is it can be just as simple as putting something in the middle.
Absolutely.
Roping off a section.
Yes. Yeah.
It doesn't have to be expensive or really time consuming. We can get creative with it. And they hadn't really considered the fact that, we can just sort of take the center up. And similarly, I think you had mentioned, if you've just got a paddock, put a tractor tire in the middle of it.
Sure.
So even if we're working with a really small space, we can still encourage more movement, because I think it was something like a horse in a paddock or a stall on average gets 1,400 steps a day, versus a horse on a track system gets about 14,000. Is that correct?
Yeah. So that was a really nice point that Shelley had made. It was in correlation. It was the difference between 70 steps and 700 steps an hour.
Yeah, which is wild. So you and I had drawn a parallel between the sedentary lifestyle that people are living and how that's become really challenging to our health for so many different reasons, and how we're seeing the same effect in horses. So they're not really moving around enough. They're not using their bodies properly. That's impacting digestion. It's impacting their mental, emotional, and physical health in so many different ways. And how neat that doing something like this gives us an opportunity to help them with that and help encourage and increase the amount of movement.
Absolutely. And it's also, this is their lifestyle. So it's something that gets to happen besides the point, where you're not always the one doing it for them. You're not always the one walking them. You're not always the one making sure that they get out. You kind of want your horses to take care of themselves, ideally.
Yeah.
And then go and enjoy them and allow them to enjoy their life when you're not there and not just spend their day waiting for you. So that's a really important thing to consider as well.
Yeah.
With the whole idea of the track system and looking at the benefits, what really happened for us is this idea of the horse being a mirror. And what I started to realize as I was heading into my late 40s, the horses were just getting more sick. Like Cushing's was just normal. If you haven't been diagnosed, you will be, kind of deal. And a lot of joint issues were normalized. Thrush is normalized. Skin conditions are normalized. So basically, a lot of the side effects from the sedentary lifestyle and high sugar and starch diets are normalized. And then we have prescription medicine from the pharmaceutical industry to help us with these normalized situations. And unfortunately, none of it's normal. It's abnormal, and that's why we have the issue. And to bring the horses back to homeostasis means that they need to have some of their main needs met. These are not wants, these are needs. Everyone knows the 3 Fs: friends, freedom, forage. What does that really mean, right? But it's a good place to start. And so with the friends, sometimes that's hard because, especially in certain barns, it's all about being separated for safety and those kind of thoughts. But often a happy horse is a much safer horse. And so one thing I did in a certain barn is create buddy systems. So especially horses that were already usually buddies live next to each other because horses want to get along and have a friend, And so what I did there was I used every gate handle that the owner had. She had a box of gate handles when I came and there was none when I left. We just created gates between the 2 paddocks. And so during the day, we could open up that system for the 2 horses. They loved it. And if one horse had a smaller walk-in, we would close that. And then they would have the more open walk-in to come in. So basically what you're always wanting to avoid is corners and places where horses get stuck. So you always need to understand that there needs to be some kind of flow that can happen so the horse can get out of the way when asked. Because the horse that's asking does not understand why the other horse is not responding and will simply escalate, right? They don't know, oh, there's a wall. They're just like, you are not moving and now I have to bite and kick you, right? And it just gets bigger and bigger and that poor gelding, you're just trying to do that. So our big thing is no corners. So I'm just watching for little things like that. And that again comes into being a non-event planner. And the horses started grooming each other and they had certain times where they could be together. So it's little things like that that can be done. Then at that particular barn, we made mini herds. So we had some herds of 3 and some of 5. And they started using round bin feeders. They made little feed houses and the horses would come around. And then I always like to have multiple stations of food. So it's not because they need more food. It's because they need more things to do. And basically eating is what they do. That's how we also socialize. And so if you can create different hay stations or just little opportunities, even if it's a handful, to just discover, it means so much to them. And then you get away from that food insecurity and it's just in one spot. So they're guarding that spot. And then again, you get into the problem of maybe a more dominating horse controlling that area. So that horse gets the 20 extra pounds and that other guy loses the 20 pounds he needed. So that is one of those things that starts to happen more in a herd environment. So to get away from that, it's simple. You have to put up more resources and simply spread them out more. And that's how it's done in nature. So in nature, if they showed up and the field was barren, they would have lots of space between each other. Nobody is fighting. And then if it's all lush and green, which is usually what we see, then we see the horses clump together because why care? There's so much.
Yeah. And that was so interesting to see the stationing of the food and how it's really spread out. And so for anybody listening who's interested, there were multiple smaller hay bags and multiple piles on the ground. So they're encouraged to keep moving from place to place. And it's so neat to see, have a nibble over here, then we wander over there, have a little nibble, then we wander over here. And that setup, it just makes so much sense in terms of encouraging movement. But I love that you tie in the seek component. And as you were discussing the various pieces that get lost in terms of their bodily communication and really their neural circuitry, it's fascinating to think about the extent of that loss and how it likely shows up in other things that we're asking of them. So I feel like horses that are moving around more consistently have access to different terrain. They're more nimble, they're more sure-footed. We tend to see a lot of stalled horses that are kind of clumsy. It's like they lose a little bit of that proprioception. And so I love the concept. And you had mentioned earlier putting poles out. And this is something, again, I don't think people think always that we can do it with what we have, but I used to put poles in my horses' paddock because why not? Just introduce something that makes them think about where their feet are and that they have to step over because it creates some interest. It creates just some variety for them. And it ties back in a little bit of that mental and bodily connection that they're starting to lose as a result of not necessarily being able to move around and communicate or use their bodies in the ways that they were designed to.
Absolutely, like neuroplasticity, right?
Yeah.
And so we're fortunate because our top track has varied terrain. So we have some hills, which is great. And then we have a loafing area, which goes up at a slant and then comes back down. So all of that is super important. And then we left in behind the trees because there's no grass. One of the reasons we don't have a grass track is because our horses are prone to laminitis and they cannot do high sugar diets. They're purebred Arabs. They're meant to eat dust. So we're always sourcing out low sugar hay and such things. But in the back of the trees there, we don't have this problem. And so we were able to leave the rocks and the roots and the earth and the different branches and things that came down, which is very important for their sense of where they are in space. But also beyond that, just the idea of what muscles does it take to lift and place? That, and then the core and the shoulder and the neurological connection and the spinal movement. I mean, each thing that the horse is required to do is a whole body exercise. One of the simplest ways for us to stay in incredibly good shape is simply to create a space on the floor that you would spend half an hour to an hour on a day. So if you still can get on the floor and get back up, please don't stop because one day you won't be able to do it simply because you stopped doing it. So a lot of things like yoga, Pilates, and different exercises, and even stretching will have you go on the floor and come up. That alone is extremely grounding. But it's also when you're spending time, like maybe you're just going to read a magazine there or be on your laptop or whatever you're doing, you're still going to maybe start in crisscross applesauce. But you're going to move. Right? And that movement alone is your body informing and stretching and adding more words to its movement dictionary. And so it's going to trigger all the muscles that you need for your posture. So they did studies where floor cultures who still eat on the floor, sleep on the floor, that kind of stuff, have very, very low incidences of osteoporosis. They have pretty much no hip issues or lower back complaints. And so where I'm bringing this back to is the horse needs to be in its natural, or as close to as we can, environment and nature. And because we're basically saying be in this flat, perfectly created space, but be your wild, amazingly beautiful, muscled self.
Yes. Yeah.
You know, and so it's the same. So what are we up to here?
Yeah, it's so true because we're not setting them up for success. We see tons and tons of atrophy in the musculature of stable horses relative to horses that are able to move around. And yet, the thing that I run into so frequently as a saddle fitter, we're expecting to improve the musculature by fixing the saddle, which, of course, if the saddle's pinching, that's problematic. But if the horse isn't moving or able to use their body and they're stuck with their head up in the air, inverted all the time, of course, we're going to have a hard time getting that back to look really fit because it's not working. It's not doing anything the vast majority of the time. So we're losing just the muscle density itself from the static nature and of the sedentary lifestyle that we've kind of
The saddle
adopted
should be supporting the horse
Mm-hmm.
and enabling a smoother connection, like
Yeah.
a good running shoe. If you're an out of shape runner, and I'm going to give you a super cushiony, big, fat air pocket, I'm really going to do a lot of damage actually to your legs and to all of those things because you don't have the musculature in your actual foot to be doing the exercise. And so you need to build the muscles before you put the great equipment on top. And so when I take the great equipment away, you can no longer run because you don't have the muscles. But if you built those muscles and I gave you the great equipment, that's what that's for. So what are we doing when we're compromising our feet? And what are we doing when we're compromising our horse's feet?
Well, and I was going to say, I'd love to even talk a little bit about that because I know you had mentioned that the horses there were struggling initially with some laminitis. And so if you can share a little about that, because I was really amazed to hear how much the movement and walking was able to help reverse the laminitic event.
Okay, so with laminitis and the track systems, laminitis is all about inflammation, right? Inflammation of the lamina. Absolutely. And so that's now inflamed, and then it could be pulling apart, and it could be causing shifts and changes in P3 in the coffin bone. So this is what we're talking about here. And so we can have mechanical laminitis, we can have a metabolic laminitis, we can have laminitis brought on by any number of factors. But what it really is inflammation of the lamina. So how do we get inflammation out of the body? We move, we exercise gently, we eliminate sugars and starches, we go on an elimination diet, we do a cleanse. These are all ways to get the body to go into self-healing. Because what's really exciting for our bodies and our horses' bodies is that they're designed to self-heal. That is so fantastic because there's so much better at it than any doctor or vet or anyone else. Is your body, is your best doctor or vet, right? Your horse's body. And so if you can help that system, support that system in the best way. So the best way to do that is get at how does the system operate? What does that system need to function at its best? And it is for both horse and human, moderate movement. It's not high impact, it's not intense cardio, it's not massive resistance training. We're just talking about a baseline of health. We were designed to move, horses were designed to move. Inside of this design, there is this incredibly complex system that is activated through that gentle movement. And so in the steps, in the walking with the lamina, it's hard, but they're going to start healing. Now, of course, so many factors are going to support that healing journey, like your diet and your trim and environmental stressors. So, is your horse isolated? Is your horse worried about food? So, how much cortisol is running through your horse at a consistent rate? And is your horse able to come from its sympathetic to its parasympathetic nervous system? Is it regulating? That all has this huge effect on the whole system, which again creates inflammation, which then ends up in the feet, which aren't moving to pump it through, right? So it's often said that the horse has 5 hearts, has a main heart and 4 hearts, each one in the frog.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
I did not heard that.
No, very nice one. Yeah. Each frog pumps. It's all a loop system.
So there's a few things that I want to dig into there. You had mentioned the cleanse, and one of the things that we talked quite a bit about, both you and I, and you touched on it at the Truxton tour, is the nutrition and relative toxin load in horses. And I know you had mentioned that you and some of the other ladies at the farm had really kind of done a deep dive and started to notice when the horses were having some inflammatory conditions that, hey, we really need to dial it back and ensure that we have as much knowledge and preparedness around what's going into their bodies, and how you then started to think the same way about what was going into your bodies. And I'd love to hear a little bit more about that, because it is such a fascinating challenge that we're up against now in the industry with the feed and the quality of things that are going into our bodies in the form of groceries and into our horses' bodies.
Yeah, absolutely. So, we were discussing that earlier and just talking about the fact that the agricultural food industry is a byproduct of whatever the food industry is leaving over for us. So, suddenly we have a lot of soy. Without a lot of seed oils, we have an awful lot of canola left over. And we got all this GMO beet pulp, and we've got corn, and we've got all this extras, right? So where do we put it? We put it in the animal feed. And these animals, especially horses, do not need these fats, these seed oils, these sadly hidden preservatives, because I was feeding my horses these kind of pelleted feeds in Brazil because I was really under the impression that I needed to buy this complete feed pellet so that my horse would be healthy, right? Or obviously, because that was really important to me. Meanwhile, I'm actually buying the poison that's causing the skin rash on my horses. So there, because it's so hot, they have to have all these preservatives so things don't go off, right? So if you're selling something that has molasses in it, but it's 30 degrees all the time, there's got to be some stabilizer in there. So now my horses are eating these stabilizers plus a bunch of sugars they didn't need because I'm trying to get the vitamin B12. And so they ended up with what we call it sarna, but it's Swedish all over because they had never had this. Yeah. So that was the beginnings of the lessons. And then I got to show up at Island Arabians, and I just pulled up the first day, and there was 3 horses and 3 paddocks, and each one of them had Cushing, and this is a huge epidemic. Unfortunately, 2 of the 3 horses hadn't been diagnosed, or fortunately, whichever way you want to look at it, because really, what does the diagnosis bring? It just brings another drug, right? Really, it's just percent.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we'll check those levels again.
Yes.
And so I had this beautiful horse named Island Arabians put under my care. And she was the Canadian champion in 2009, which was the big claim to fame for Island Arabians. And I was like, why does a champion look like this? This is not okay. This is at that point a 15-year-old mare who was fuzzy, who had a big pot belly, who had a sway. She should not look like this. She was a champion. But the thing is that you can get away with these sweet feeds and you can get away with all of this stuff until about 15.
Mm.
That was then. Now we are already seeing 4-year-olds, 6-year-olds with full-blown Cushings because our toxic load in our feed is so high that it's affecting the horses so much earlier. And then, of course, it's being passed down genetically now too, right? So our fields have pesticides in them so that the weeds don't grow, but the hay grows. Well, there's pesticides in our hay now. And then we get into like, well, we really need our fields to grow lots, so we're going to fertilize them. So that's in our hay now. And so it just goes on from there. Mm-hmm. So that alone was like, oh, and then there's drying agents that are allowed in certain countries and states and not in others. And we always know if there's a drying agent because horses start to cough. Mm-hmm. So we're like, oh, drying agent. So we got to either soak it or hose it, and we steam all of our hay. So that helps a lot. Mm-hmm. Kills a lot of pathogens, decreases the protein slightly, but it does get all the dust pathogens and a lot of the chemicals. So that's a good option maybe for people steaming is a great one. Yeah. And we made our own steamer because Ellie was so sensitive. Mm-hmm. And so it's basically like having that child that's allergic to red dye number 7. And so you're like that crazy person. Yeah. It's like, what's ink? Yeah, that was us. And so for Ellie, even things that were recommended to us by veterinarians, by feed programs, all had additives, hidden little things that sent Ellie overboard. Mm. She was so on the tipping edge. Like her immune system was so compromised, which is exciting because we got to learn all this about the immune system. And it's like 70 to 80% of your immune system is based on your microbiome. Her microbiome was a mess. And then any mess on top of that, you're going to wreck your microbiome. So you really have to be aware of that. And then we had to get into really learning about feed ingredients and labels and names. So I did the Alicia Edwards course, Healing Horses Their Way. Oh, okay. It was fantastic. It was very in-depth. And I think when you take a course, you get a lot of information and then the learning starts. Once you start out there and all the stuff comes. So we had to go all the way to separate vitamins and minerals. And we just bought those. And then we made our own. We got low sugar Timothy D hay from Ontario cubes. Okay. And we're part of I think it's called the ECIR or something. It's the Dr. Kellner laminitic and Cushing's group. Okay. Insulin resistance group. Yeah, we're part of all that. And so we get all the case studies and all that. So she has an emergency diet she goes to. Okay. And so right away you eliminate pretty much everything. You're soaking hay. You're just taking everything away, basically like a human would go into a fast. Mm-hmm. Okay, so we're not going to fast the horse, but we are going to take away all those extras and then very slowly build back up. And then what we're really looking at for both our health as well as our horse's health are vitamin and mineral deficiencies. We are lacking, and so are our horses. And these complete feeds are not giving our horses the vitamins and minerals that we believe that they are supposed to be receiving because they're either an oxide or they are so minimal, they're trace, or they're not compatible. They're actually competing for each other, like zinc and copper, magnesium, calcium. And so often in these complete feeds, we fall completely short. But we just keep thinking, like, I'm with you. I want to buy that complete feed. Yeah. But it's just not. And so we got to learn a lot about that. And then we got to learn a lot about herbs. Which was the first pharmaceutical before PferdeSchule. It's always done with plants, which is so exciting. Mm-hmm. And our vitamins and our minerals. And so then we got that world open to us. And so we started harvesting plants and herbs and drying things. And over the last few years, our horse's health has improved tenfold. Mm-hmm. You know, it did take a long time to get out of their system. Like Jewel, our mare, she had bumps on her skin for about 3 or 4 years. And this was her first year She doesn't have the super itchy skin.
Mm.
So it takes a while for the whole system to kind of cleanse itself, but already we noticed behavioral issues improving, cognitive issues improving. We have no thrush. Our hooves are 100%. We don't use blankets.
Yeah.
Because of the track system.
Mm.
Because they're always moving and they have access to shelter.
Yeah.
We haven't used blankets in 2 years. And I tell you, that is so nice.
Mm-hmm.
Because a life with blankets means a life with a barroom full of wet blankets, blankets drying, blankets changing, blankets doing this and that.
Yeah, they're never wearing the right blanket for the weather. So there's always,
and then the weather here changes. So you better get outside to take that blanket off. Yeah. And then you better go back outside with that blanket back on. So changing the diet has really improved the coat and skin health.
mm.
And that's been able to help them really adapt to the climate.
Isn't that amazing? This climate is tough.
It's a tough one.
Horses, I would say, on Vancouver Island struggle more with the climate than anywhere I've ever been before. And do you notice that? Because you've worked with horses all over the world.
Oh, having horses is like having orchids in Alaska. I mean, I'm hoping for hand your humidifier and you're spraying.
Yeah.
Because your orchid's going to die if you don't. Yeah. And that's pretty much here,
Mm-hmm.
If you leave that horse, oh boy, you could not, it's like pushing back the ocean. Whereas in the Golden Valley belt of Alberta to Montana, you let your horse out, he's going to have such a good life.
Easy peasy.
Easy peasy. Yeah. There's so many of them in the soil. There's a mixed grassland.
Mm-hmm.
I was saying to Frank, I said, in Alberta, if you put your horse on a hay field, they'd shoot you and your horse. We do that here because of the limited space. Like, that's our hay field, but, come July.
Yeah.
We put the horses on there. It's like, who puts their horses on a hay field? That's like putting your horse on truffles. Your horse pasture is meant to have like a tumbleweed pasture and a couple rocks. And that's good horse pasture. But here it's so lush.
Now, it's interesting because you had mentioned that you noticed behavioral issues disappear with the dietary movement and cognitive stuff. Can you give me some examples of what things you noticed? Because that's fascinating.
Oh, yeah, of course. Well, like the best example is feed a kid sugar.
Mm-hmm.
Not feed an Arab sugar.
Yeah.
Same. And a lot of people used to say to me, oh, it's the breed. And I would be like, I think it's the feed and the keep. I don't think it's the breed. Yes, that breed is very specific, like every breed. It has very specific things that are attributed to it and it's better at.
Mm-hmm.
But no, that breed is not known to be anxious and run through fences and be wired. Like, oof, that's dangerous. And that's a mismanagement. Yeah. That's not a characteristic. Why would you have any more of those if that's a characteristic?
So true.
It's not who they are. So when you get away from those things, like the sugars and the high starches that are really taking a lot of energy from your body, like we know that.
Yeah.
I love brownies. I had some yesterday. I had a migraine. Yes, I did.
Yeah.
It was something I had to do. And so I might have not had a migraine if I went for a swim. So again, movement. And then if the horses were having a moment of high sugar or something, they still had that movement to drop the insulin down. Right?
Yeah. Get it processed through the system.
Processing through the system. So what's happening is the insulin's rising. Then we're getting into insulin resistance, which is affecting our pituitary gland for our horses. And so, that's huge mentally and emotionally. And we both know how we feel when we're inflamed. Not healthy pappies.
No, exactly.
And so how must they feel? Like everything's a little bit more irritating. Then you got the edgy plus the energy.
Yeah, it's so true. And I think that's one of the things that I noticed just being amongst the herd. There's none of that.
They're so good, and they're always teaching me. Like I thought maybe they would be pushy in the mornings. Now we have a walk-in barn and stall situation. So they share a whole row of stalls. We took all the walls out and they have 3 exits and they can just come and go. And I thought for sure they would start banging and like being very insistent in the morning. But again, they're not because there's no sugar rush.
Right.
So really all they need is their hay. And then I can pretty much take my time with the mash.
Access to forage throughout the day helps with that as well.
And I really appreciated that piece. I listened to one of your previous guests, Helgi, is it?
Yeah.
And she was talking about, wonderful things about trauma and different things. One of the things she talked about was the stacking.
Mm-hmm.
And I was saying to Rachel, my coworker, that this is why I come out and feed at 7:30. Even though I have mornings off, and even on those mornings off, I still go out and feed because Rachel has to feed her horses. And for them to wait till 8 would cause the anxiety to come to such a level that now we're out of harmony.
Right.
Cortisol is up. And now all of these behaviors that become habitual and learned are coming out. And we had a lot of those behaviors when we first met each other. They came from the show world in small stalls and they had a lot to say. And so it didn't come overnight that we suddenly had 2 large free tracks and a walk-in, walk-out barn. This is in stages. But those horses that I met, those people that told me those horses couldn't be there were right. Not in that mindset. They had to come off of that mindset and start to learn a new skill set of being.
Yeah.
And they had to co-regulate and with inside themselves as well. And so all of that leads to a calm horse, but they can rely on you, that they know that you're going to show up. And we say, oh, it doesn't matter. It does matter. It does matter. It matters a lot to them. And so it's the little things like that. And so it was great that she had said that because I was like, see, I'm not just being like that person that has to be doing stuff. I know there's a reason. I feel it inside them.
Yes. And I think that's the coolest part of when you start to tune in to your horses is to see how much they're communicating all the time and how much we're missing. And the importance of things like feed. One of the biggest challenges we're having right now on the island is horses just not getting fed and not having water because people can't get barn help. And so meal times are wildly inconsistent, fluctuating by many hours a lot of the time. And I'm seeing this all over the place.
We have our priorities and our values really mixed up, which is okay because we can unmix them.
Yeah.
And we can get them sorted again. Like we might value an expensive car as an example. That's a high value, right? A lot of people find that's really important.
Yeah.
Well, guess what? You walking to your local store is a higher value than that car for your life quality. What your system was designed to do was not sit in that expensive car and drive 5 kilometers to that store. Your system was designed to what? And if you wanted the highest bang for your buck, that's what you would be doing. And it's the same, what are we valuing? And if our highest priority is feed and fresh water, then we have things really mixed up. And then we don't need to wonder why we have a whole bunch of issues that are coming our way. Imagine if we didn't feed our kids or give them access to fresh water.
Yeah.
And then we wondered why they were moody and kicking the back of the car seat when you picked them up. It's like none of his actual needs have been met.
Yeah.
I know, poor guy. I know. Feed him some veggies on a regular time with some protein. I think he's going to be more than fine, and they'll let him go for a walk in nature.
Yeah, go play outside.
And it's the same for our horses.
Yeah.
They are nature.
Yeah. It's, I think that's one of the most challenging things is the way we keep them is so unnatural.
Yes.
And even when we have access to pasture or stays, there's just a lot of fear around what will happen if they're allowed to be together and allowed to move around a little bit more. It's often that they'll be stupid or that they'll hurt themselves. And it's tricky because, as you said, sometimes in the state that they're in, if they're already using elevated cortisol levels and already having this sort of allostatic load that's really at its tipping point because there are too many things that their bodies and their brains are already having to contend with, then all of a sudden trying to introduce something new does feel really difficult. But I think it's nice to ponder some of the ways in which we can add enrichment, add movement, and start looking at how we can meet more of those needs.
Definitely. Yeah, things can look difficult. Things have to be done in stages. Always. If somebody is in a traumatic place or a horse is in a traumatic place, that's not the right time to be introducing, some of these concepts. But the reason they're there is because those are missing.
Yes.
So again, it's like, is it the horse or the cart or the cart or the horse? Yes. Right? And so when I see these horse therapy places, which is awesome, I know that these horses are really helping people. I often want to go and give those horses the therapy that they need, which is like rehabilitation to their essence. That's the horse you're looking for. That's the one who thinks. That's the one who connects. That's the one who's able to make choices. And is really working with you. But none of those things can be happening when we're vibrating at a different frequency, a frequency of survival.
Very good point.
Yeah. So if we're vibrating at a frequency of safety where our needs are met, we're completely different than if we're vibrating at survival where our needs aren't met. I'm not going to make a friend when I'm in survival.
Yeah, and that's such a powerful thought right there for anybody listening. And I feel like we end up talking about this in one way or another on just about every episode, but most horses in boarding facilities, and this is here on Vancouver Island, but I know it happens elsewhere too. We're just sort of limited because we're on an island. Real estate is limited. So we have smaller and smaller spaces. We have fewer and fewer boarding facilities. We have lots of barns closing down. But the challenge becomes the horses are not having any of their core needs met. And so, of course, they're in that survival mode a lot of the time with elevated cortisol levels and a lot of the toxin load from the processed foods and all the chemicals on the hay. And so it's interesting to ponder, okay, how can we make our horses feel more safe? Because I think one of the things that I see, and I've worked with thousands and thousands of horses and riders over my decades in this sport and as a saddle fitter and coaching. And one of the things that I consistently see is a lack of awareness and empathy for where the horse is coming from. And all of the things that you're saying today is like, oh yeah, they're not coming from a great place. And that's why we're seeing so many of these issues. But at what point do we start to step up and take responsibility or think a little bit more critically about the way they're being kept and understanding that maybe we could influence that in a positive way and start seeing better outcomes in their bodies, their brains, their mental and emotional state?
I think it'll come at the point where we make that choice. And like in Switzerland, if you have over 10 horses, you have to go to quite an expensive course and you have to get this little degree in that. And what was nice was that there was a lot of horse people who had between 5 and 7 horses. So they didn't need to go to this course. And like I said, it was quite expensive. They went and did it anyway, And so these kind of things, it's like if we're going to have these majestic animals, we need to step up. And they're here to teach us to step up. They're always teaching us to step up and then they help us, right? Like they're so incredible at helping us heal. They helped us win wars. They helped us conquer things we wanted to conquer. They helped us find new places and navigate new, horizons. And here we all are. And thank you to the horse, by the way. And so now the horse is helping us see that what we're doing isn't working. The pesticides, the additives, the chemicals alone are making us sick. But in combination with the lack of movement, the sedentary lifestyles that we ourselves, as well as the horses are now in, are causing the diseases that we see. And so It's really frustrating because it's kind of like the elephant in the room.
Mm.
Nobody wants to talk about it. And so if your vet or doctor would say to you, right, these are your conditions. Maybe you have inflammation, you have 10 extra pounds, you're getting these headaches, you're kind of getting some lower back pain. What are we doing for light movement? How are we exercising? What's our diet like? When is your last meal? What kind of things are you eating? If we're asking these questions, we know that we have somebody here who understands the system that they're trying to heal. But if we're only getting prescription medications for ourselves or for our horses, and unfortunately for our horses, these are prescription medications which are no longer available to humans and have been moved over to the agricultural industry. And unfortunately, it comes with 26 side effects that may or may not happen, so don't worry. And that's fine. Okay. And so it's really hard because I know it's hard to say the way that you're keeping your horse and feeding your horse is causing this disease. Fortunately, the solution is so much simpler than we give it credit for. And if we could simply come to the conclusion that an animal of this size needs this amount of space, which, by the way, we used to have those rules. I think it was 1 horse per 4 acres in Alberta for a while. And so you could have 5 horses on 20 acres. But I think a lot of that was also like what could feed your horse over that time. But that was kind of the parameter. So we need to decide that we need to do better for our horses, and we have the creative potential.
Yeah.
And if that means right now, the first thing you can do better is have a look at your hay. And if you're in a barn situation where they're feeding local high sugar hay because it's like $20 a bale instead of 28, go and get yourself some nice hay. You can start helping the microbiome just by that. Then you could start and kind of look at the ingredient lists of your preferred choice of foods. Maybe if you're having a real problem, just take a little break from that and then reassess and find connections and ways to look for more natural sources. And back to that with our human feed. So then we as a team started looking at how come I can't read all these ingredients? Yeah, or how come there's like all these seed oils and how come there's this cornmeal additive and this high fructose syrup and I didn't even know. So I started looking at that and just deciding to eliminate a lot of ultra processed and processed foods, and what a shift that made. And so it was just more of an elimination of extras and a return to simplicity. And we did it for the horses, we did it for ourselves, and we just had like a lot of really huge benefits and results.
It's amazing. And one of the things that I noticed on your track and that you talked a little bit about is the water buffet that you do for the horses.
Yeah.
I would love for you to tell my listeners a little bit about that because it was such a neat concept. And again, like a pretty easy way that we can incorporate some of their needs as well as some enrichment and some variety for them. So can you tell us?
Absolutely. And that leads me back to one really important aspect that we haven't talked much about, and that is choice. So choice changes everything. If I asked you to go to a movie and I gave you the option of 2 different movies, possibly 3, you would be like, wow, that is a lot of choice.
Yeah.
But if I just told you we were going to one movie, you would be like, and so which is fine. You might be into that one movie, but it would change the thing for you greatly. So they did this little study in an old folks' home. This one set of people got choice. So they got to choose where they would have their visitor. They could have it in their room or they could have it out in any of the areas. Then they got to choose Wednesday nights. It was movie night, but they got to choose from 3 movies which one they wanted to watch. And then there was a third one. It was something about a meal, and they had a choice between 2 things at least. So then they had the other group that they studied, and there was no choice. life quality and satisfaction went down significantly with the group with no choice. Yeah. So same thing for the horses. So the water buffet offers a lot of choice, just in that alone. Then we always have the choices of which exit. We have multiple exits. Then we have choices of where you want to eat. We have different little hay piles and stuff. So we try and add a lot of choice. We even have choice to the point where we're very flexible. So if the horses come out of the drive and there's 2 ways you can go, and they can choose, because both ways end up where we want to go. So some days they're like, I don't know. And it might be just my dryer on that side.
Yes.
And they're like, so we go the other way. Yeah, which is fine. So we have that choice. So if you can think about building in more choice and just allowing a little bit of choice. And it might just be that you turn left instead of right and, go a different way. Let your horse do that. It's just really good for the mental well-being. What's good for our mind is good for our body and vice versa. So the water buffet offers a lot of choice. So we have different minerals or herbs. We have salt, low salt water. We have baking soda. We have apple cider vinegar. So it was interesting because Ellie was quite ulcery most of her life. And so she really loved the baking soda. It was super calming for her stomach. And then the other horses really gravitate to the apple cider vinegar because they're trying to keep their acidity a little bit higher, which is where horses like to be. And so then we have turmeric, big hit. Sometimes we'll do chaseberry, we'll do chamomile. Tea is a really big hit too. So we harvest the chamomiles and then make a little tea for them. And then obviously it's cool. So it's usually in the buckets, those average 25-liter buckets. And then our horses, for some reason, and they'll probably start now that I've said it, but they don't push over the bucket. Some fight. And so I've seen beautifully handcrafted like wooden things where they all sit in so that they don't have that. Other people have made it so they hang off of a certain thing but we just put ours out in a row and they just stay there. So we go with the flow. Perfect. Yeah, it's perfect. And of course, there's always fresh water. And sometimes there might be magnesium water. There might be clove. So different things. We try out different things. And then sometimes they'll stand there for a few days and then they'll choose to have it. Okay. Depends. Yeah. Like the apple cider vinegar water doesn't go bad. Yeah. Baking soda water doesn't go bad. Sure. It'll be fine. Yeah. Sometimes the teas get a little gnarly and then we just put those on the compost. Sure. Oh, that's such a neat way to integrate choice. And I love that you said that because that's one of the things that has become really striking for me is how little choice horses have in anything in the run of their day. And it's interesting. I was having a conversation one day and somebody had been listening to, I think, a clinic hosted by an animal communicator. And they were like, well, they always have choice. Like they've chosen to be where they are and whatnot. And I was like, I'm sorry, that's a load of shit because they don't get to choose what barn we take them to. They don't get to choose what stall they wind up in. They don't get to choose whether or not they get fed, whether or not they get watered, whether or not they get ridden, when any of those things happen, whether or not they're turned out with a buddy, whether they hate their neighbor, whether their owner comes and is highly stressed all the time and doesn't listen to them or doesn't understand them or is scared of them or is really fueling their anxiety. And so it's a big realization for people. Like your horses have almost no choice in their lives. And if we think about the implications of that, and if we try to wear their shoes for a moment, like, wow, what would that be like? Because I find we're often so quick to correct behaviors or squash anything that doesn't feel perfectly aligned with what we want from them. But where are we just sort of squashing self-expression? And where are we limiting communication versus allowing them to be authentic and allowing them to express something and allowing them to maybe choose? If they want to go over here and sniff something, like I used to just kind of go on little adventure walks and let them choose. Like, empathy is the biggest thing, right? So just taking a step back understanding the species
Mm.
first and foremost. So what is the equine species? What are its actual needs and how does the digestive system work? Those would be principles that were really important to understand equine welfare. And then how does movement play into that? How does herd living, the herd animals, by the way. And then we can become more and more and more empathetic and really put ourselves in their hooves a little bit, and be like, if I was a horse, and I already know if I was a horse, you would have to shoot me at long range because I would be that pissed off. But if I was a horse, how would you feel about them?
Yeah.
Right? And they are so nice because they are so much nicer than I ever would be as a horse.
Yeah.
If I had that kind of power.
Yes, it's so true. And again, I feel like I've talked about this on previous episodes, but it's just something that I think more and more we're lacking in society and in the way that we're interacting with one another. I feel like during the pandemic, especially, people became a little bit more us versus them and a little bit more antagonistic in the way they view people and situations. And so it's been kind of an interesting evolution noticing that and then noticing the impact because we've all kind of been traumatized by some of the changes in our world recently. But if we think about, okay, how does that feel for us? Well, how do our horses feel about that?
Well, I think the exciting thing about all of that is that every movement has a reactionary movement. And what we're actually in is the opposite. That's why we're talking. That's why this audience is coming. That's why everybody's coming out of the woodwork.
Yeah.
Because it's like, actually, no, it's not like that. We're ready.
Yeah.
And we're ready because it hasn't worked. And we're ready because the people who tell us it's supposed to work aren't fixing it.
Yeah.
And now we have to go and figure it out for ourselves. And that's actually always been our job.
Yeah.
Like we all want to be like, here, fix it and give it back to me. I'll fix it. I'll give you some money. But it's like, God damn it. I need to fix this now. And so what we're learning is that we're on our own journeys as a united front. And that we're learning from our journeys together. And that we're coming together and we're like, this doesn't feel good. And they're like, you're right. This doesn't feel good. And so now we're like, okay, it doesn't feel good. Can we come up with solutions? That's what we are. We're creators. We're creative beings. And that's where we're happiest, when we're creating. So we're okay. If that doesn't work, could we? And then it's little things that start the win, right? And you start feeling it. You're like, now I got these 2 little hay nets. Okay, so now my horse who's stalled has 2 little spots to go to. Your horse would be so happy. That's the cool thing. When they have little, they're so happy. Yeah. Once they have it all, they're like, are we going to the other track? Yeah. Because we're kind of done.
This one's played out.
Yeah, we've smelled everything, and so that's the benefit of that.
And I love that you mentioned that because I would also ask for anybody who is looking to incorporate more movement and just more well-being, more choice, all of the things that a track system gives them. But say they're at a boarding barn, they're really limited. The horse is stalled or in a small paddock for most of the day. You mentioned like even just having a second little hay net, like that could be great. Having a second water bucket, maybe with something different in it, that sort of thing. What are some other little tips or tricks that you could give to inspire people to get creative with what they have?
Absolutely. So I like building community. I think horses like it too. And so if you have a friend or someone, okay, first of all, if you have someone at the barn that you're connecting with who also has a horse, could you find a way to maybe go for a walk together? Could you maybe, I used to do a lot of pose with purpose classes. You just go out there, put some music on, you do some trot walk transitions. It's nice and warming for you and the horse. Anything like that. Can you just get social with your horse? Often it would just be like we would meet as a group of 4 and we'd have a few little things, but it was more about being social and for the horses to be social, to have that time. And if you don't have a friend at your barn, then take a friend. Introduce somebody to your horse. Your horse is a healer. And so that gift alone, and your horse loves giving these gifts, loves it. And like people without agendas really talk with their list. And so you brought somebody to appreciate me. Yes. So you can do little things like that because I know it gets lonely and it gets cold, especially this time of year, at December. How do we get motivated? Yeah. So little things like that would be really helpful. Get an extra bale of low sugar hay, keep it somewhere where you can keep your stuff in your tap room or whatever, and give a little bit of extra forage. Maybe it helps buffer the hindgut and bring that insulin level a little bit down. Have a look at your treats. I hate to be that person who says, don't buy this, but just don't buy that. Yeah. Don't buy things that you have to open the package like this and grab it. Get carrots, get apples. You can look up online, right? Safe treats, safe vegetables for horses, anything like that. Because the more we get away from processed things, the better it's going to be for us and our horses, because those things have to have stabilizers in them. Otherwise, they'll go off on the store shelf and then nobody can sell them, right? So it's not anything against the product. It's just that that's what that product is. Yeah. Get nice apples and then just cut your little one apple in all your little slices, and that's your little thing. And one carrot. Yeah. And none of those are going to affect your horse. But, if you're really worried, there are even lower insulin, things like salad. Yeah. Yeah. That's a great idea. Sure. And even, like you said earlier, steaming the hay or rinsing it, soaking it. If you're noticing it's dusty, essentially. Yeah. And then you can do those things like, you could clean your horse's shelter. That would be nice. They need all of that dust and cobwebs and all of that stuff. Would the space feel nicer? Could you give your box stall a revamp? For Christmas, could you put some bedding in it? Yeah. That would be kind of fun. And even one of the things that it just reminded me of this is even having different types of footing. Yeah. Have a little sand area. Yeah. So if they're in a gravel paddock, they're probably not lying down there because it's uncomfortable, or they're lying down and getting ox sores and things like that. Get some sand in, give them a nice spot. Or, there's just other things that we can do. If the paddocks are really muddy, maybe we put some gravel in. So give them some different terrain. Put a couple poles in their paddock just so that they have things to step over, or something in the middle of the paddock, like a tractor tire that then holds their hay. Maybe that's one of the hay stations, but also gives them something to walk around. Just creative solutions to encourage and incorporate some movement, some choice, some stimulation, some proprioception. At the end of the day, the people are going to be the ones who say how the horses are kept. So if we as a group, equestrians, decide we need track systems, we need mini herds, we need it a different way, the boarding stables will accommodate. Yeah. If we don't have clients who want horses in their boxes and say, hey, for a health reason alone, I can't put my horse in this kind of a living environment, we could also start making changes. I often say keeping a horse like this is like you put a whale in an aquarium and why it didn't work. Yeah. It'll work for a really short time, but a whale has a very long lifespan, so does a horse. But we really reduce it by the way that we end up keeping them, treating them in that time frame. Right? Yeah. Yeah, it's so true. Yeah, it's a very interesting way of looking at it. And I think, I hope that empowering people with this kind of knowledge and having the conversations that we're having, because I know from a lot of the people that I see on a daily basis, people are not happy because the horse doesn't be happy. And horses are sick. People are sick. Yeah. So why are people paid? Why do we have to pay $1,000 a month to keep a horse in a way that we don't want? Yeah. It's an interesting question, isn't it? Yeah, it's something maybe more of us need to start asking. Yeah, exactly. Is there a way that we could possibly make some changes slowly for these animals? Yeah, and I like the idea of even just, if you have two paddocks side by side, take out boards on each end.
have it, they can slide in and out so that if you have two paddock mates who are friends, friendly, they can then start integrating with one another.
It worked really well for us to have it timed.
Yeah.
And then it was also nice for that time for the owners because a lot of people aren't used to working with multiple horses.
Yes.
And so that's fine because in that situation, they would tell me when they were coming. And I would go and I would just have the horses be back in their separate paddocks. It was no big deal, you know? So, and also people can learn.
Absolutely.
Why would we say, oh, we can't do that? Well, I'm sure there was a day when you couldn't ride, but you learned.
Yes.
So now you can learn to be around multiple horses. And these are all wonderful things that we can start to learn together.
Yeah. And I would argue you should start to learn together because a lack of knowledge is what's keeping us stuck. And a lot of it is what's keeping our horses unhealthy.
Yeah.
So if we challenge ourselves to learn and to improve the skill sets, the knowledge sets that we don't have yet, we'll all be better for it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We don't want to live a limited life.
No.
This is what I know now. I know these to exist.
Yeah. And it's funny, I think how often we do approach horses a little bit that way.
Yes, we know.
Yeah.
We know. And it was Tom Durant said if he could compare his knowledge to horses to a pickup truck, he would have as much knowledge as a little pebble in the back of a pickup truck.
Wow.
And I said, well, if that's Tom Durant, so yes, I would be the speck of dust. I know that every true horse person agrees that we always know that we know nothing. And every day we're going to know a little bit more and a little bit less.
It's wild. It's such an interesting journey as you start learning. And then the unlearning is a huge one for sure.
Yeah.
I feel like we're in that stage in the industry right now.
We are
unlearning,
unraveling, which is super healthy.
Yeah.
And we get to look back at things.
Yes.
And it's a beautiful industry. It has many, many beautiful qualities about it. And with every industry, there's a dark side. And we want to step away from that. It's not serving us. It's not making us happy. It's not making the environment happy. Like those boarding barns are hard on the environment, you know.
Yeah.
And track systems, again, alleviate a lot of that standing pressure.
Yeah.
So that also changes the land and the energy of the land as well. Because just that standing, it's very heavy on the land, you know, where we really see like how the birds and the insects and even the animals like the deer, they're all integrated into these track systems in a really beautiful way.
And always in motion.
Always in motion, yeah.
I guess in closing, would there be anything that you would encourage people to try or anything that you want people to know based on the realizations you've had with all of this knowledge and learning?
I think I would suggest trying just to enjoy your horses and yourself more. Take the stress off, take the pressure off.
Yeah.
And spend just a little bit more time being aware of the art of being. Even if it's 20%. 80% result. Take a moment and be like, I'm going to just be present in the warmth of my horse's muzzle. Just going to be present in the feeling of his skin when I grip. Like just those moments, you know? And I think the biggest takeaway is that you are enough. You have the knowledge in your heart. Just ask your heart what it thinks. And it's going to guide you.
Yeah.
And get out of your head. And get away from all those professionals. And even if you're saying, I've only been with horses 5 years, you're usually more spot on than what they're trying to get you to believe.
Yeah.
So if you're looking at something and you're saying, that doesn't look right, it's not right.
Yeah.
And that's so often the case, right? Like somebody's beating up your horse, the trainer's beating up your horse, and you're standing there going, that doesn't look right. you are right. It doesn't look right because it's not right.
Yeah.
And if you come into your barn and your stall has no food and your horse looks distressed and your part says, this doesn't look right, it's not right.
Yeah.
And you are correct. So go fix it because that's why you're here. And you have a horse because something connected you to that magical being. And it's not everybody who gets connected. So if you are lucky enough to have this connection, because you are obviously listening to this and have that connection, which means you're one of the chosen ones from the equines to learn through the equine. Be so humble and so happy. And then know that what you've done up until now, if it hasn't worked, let it go. Yeah, try something new. No problem. And don't walk around feeling bad.
Yeah.
That doesn't help. It doesn't change anything.
Yeah.
And just take the next step knowing that the next step is even more happy because it's more hopeful, because it's more in the right direction.
I love that.
And no matter how big the step,
Yeah.
if it's just the step to know I'm not going to hit my horse anymore. I'm just not. I'm just not going to make that connection with the whip on my horse. What a great first step.
Yeah.
If you really need the noise, hit your boot.
Yeah.
Make a noise, whatever.
Absolutely. Oh, yeah. And it is. It's those little mindset shifts and awareness around how we are with them. But I really love how you said, like, you're the chosen ones. And
You are.
you've been chosen by the equines to learn from them. And I think one of the challenges that we fall into in the industry so often is that we're teaching the horses, we're training the horses, we're applying aids to the horses, but we're not teaching them, and so often we're not really teaching them.
We're not teaching them. We're shaping.
Yeah.
You should be covering their basic needs. So what you have is a coherent being who's centered, curious, and self-aware. That breeds confidence. Now you have a partner.
Yeah.
Right? And we don't teach them anything. There are teachers. There are teachers. And so actually at Island Arabians, these horses needed a job, right? They came from the show world and now they need a job. Every domestic horse loves a purpose. And so their purpose is to teach the equine language to us humans. And so we're affiliated with some of the teachers at Deep Cove Elementary.
Yeah.
So they come and the kids come and ask questions and see the horses. And then I'll often do groundwork with the kids, which they love. And they all pretend to be horses. And it's so fun. And the horses will look and laugh and have a great time. And we have like obstacle courses. And then we have 4 members in our team, myself and Rachel, Ella, and Danielle. And we are the students. And the horses are the teachers.
It's amazing.
And it's awesome. And we learn every single day. And we're learning so much right now about our own body language and about what we say and what the horse is seeing are 2 different things.
Yeah.
So every day is another learning opportunity.
That's fantastic. And I think that's a good spot to leave people with that reminder. I hope for everybody listening, allow that to make you more curious of, how you're showing up, and more curious about how your horse is impacted by you or their environment. And curiosity is such a huge piece of this journey. And the more questions we can ask, the more we can just sort of ponder the impact of things on them, or what we could do to make things different, more interesting, or to just feel better for us, for them, for our partnership. I think that guides the way so often.
Yeah, absolutely. I think everybody who has anything to do with horses, if they just close their eyes and find that heart connection, that's the horse's purpose.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you joining us today and sharing your passion and your knowledge and just so much great insight. I hope it's inspired everybody listening to go and see what you guys can do to improve.
Go be yourself and create an environment you want to be in.
Yeah, well said.
You create a space that you feel good in.
Yeah.
And then you're going to grow out of that space. Make another space that you feel good in. That's how we cocoon our way through life.
And we don't have to put so much pressure on ourselves either if we kind of look at it that way. We can just go and play and get creative. I love that you've connected. Ultimately, we're creators. We're put here to use our brains in that way and come up with solutions. And so everybody go out and come up with some solutions.
An inch will give you a mile.
Yeah. And I love to put in 20% of your energy and you'll get 80% back, because that is amazing once you start opening yourself up to things. And we've talked about this previously. As soon as you become available for a better option, a better solution, a better way, it becomes available to you. The synergy of that is really quite incredible. So this is a great start, hopefully, for anybody who's been curious. And where can people find you, Anne, if they want?
At Island Arabians. And the best way to get in touch with me is wildhorseak at gmail.com.
Wonderful.
I'm a big emailer. And simple, and I'm really happy to answer lots of questions as well as give track tours and just show what we're up to there.
Fabulous. And it's a magnificent facility. So if anybody is interested in seeing it,
Get in touch with you.
yes, definitely reach out to Anne, because I was blown away at what you guys have done there. It looks fantastic.
It's a labor of love.
Well, everything with horses really is. Absolutely. None of it comes easily. And
work is love made visible.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Thank you. And thank you all for watching. Stay curious, stay unbridled, and we will see you on the next episode. Take care.